Victor. Good to have you with us. What's your sense? How does Beijing view the strike that the U.S. made on Venezuela?
I think China condemns such an act of aggression and intrusion into a sovereign country and hijacking or abducting a head of state and the first lady. This is purely, in China's view, a violation of the international norms and international relations and a violation of the United Nations Charter. And if the United States can do this to Venezuela, the United States or any other country can do similar things to any other country. And what really drives President Trump and the U.S. government is to seize the oil assets in Venezuela. Now, this is not American asset, this is Venezuela asset. And for President Trump to pretend that he will run the affairs of Venezuela is very presumptuous in the least, and also very much destabilizing the international relations. If any country can do this to the oil assets of Venezuela, they can do similar things to Saudi Arabia, or to Qatar, or to UAE, and where will be peace and stability in the world? So I think China wants to stand by the right side of the history, and the United States apparently, in China's view, is on the wrong side of history. This will not make America great again. This will really be a very dark moment in the U.S. history. And in my best judgment, history will look back upon this event as the beginning of the end of Pax Americana, because the United States, through this act of aggression against Venezuela and against the sovereign president of Venezuela, is really starting a new phase in its development. It may eventually lead to the end of Pax Americana. No one in the world wants to be dominated by a domineering country.
Victor, might China be concerned about its own interests in Venezuela? Because by some calculations, China has lent Venezuela about $100 billion.
Of course, China-Venezuela relations are very close, and we cooperate with each other fully. And this is all normal contracts. And for the United States to launch such a blatant act of aggression against Venezuela is a matter of great concern to China. And China wants to call for stability, and China wants to continue working relations with Venezuela, especially with the current government. And if there will be a new government eventually in due course, of course, China wants to maintain normal relations with the future government in Venezuela. But all this is no small matter, because what the United States is doing is not only negatively impacting on the legitimate business interests of China and Venezuela, it really undermines the international norms. And if this becomes a precedent, I think the United States will strike fear in many other countries in the world. And allow me to mention, philosophically, striking fear is not equivalent to gaining respect. Fear is not getting respect, and the United States will be better served if it gains respect rather than striking fear in other countries.
What do you make of the timing of the event? We know that President Maduro had just met with Chinese special envoy moments before he was snatched from his own country. Might Venezuela be sending China a message?
Well, China stands firm on matters of principle, and China protects its own sovereignty and territorial integrity without any reservation. And the fact that the Chinese special envoy met with President Maduro and the foreign minister, for example, is an indication that China-Venezuela relations are very close, and the two countries respect each other and deal with each other for mutual benefit. And the fact that the U.S. raid into Caracas happened just hours after the very important meeting is not surprising at all, because the United States has been working on the situation for months. And President Trump even mentioned that they plan to start this raid quite a few days ago, but because of the weather condition, they slowed down till the wee hours of the second day of the new year. Now, there is a coincidence, of course, but I think the United States might have taken this very dramatic action of aggression against Venezuela with or without this important meeting of Chinese Special Envoy with President Maduro. What matters is, I was trained in the United States, and for many decades, the United States has called itself as the beacon on the top of the mountain. And the rest of the world, many countries in the world, actually believe that. But I think through this act, the United States probably is suffering a free fall from the top of the mountain into the abyss of the rule of the jungle. And this is not a very good day for the United States. I hope President Trump and his government will realize that the philosophy of don't do unto others what you don't want others do unto you is prevailing and will be a lasting wisdom for the United States and for many other countries in the world.
How are you responding to what the Chinese people are doing? They're taking to social media, expressing that perhaps this is a template, a blueprint for China in its dealings with Taiwan.
Well, the Chinese social media is very active. Hundreds of millions of people keep chatting around about all things under the sun, for example. But I will not be very much moved by these sentiments. I think China has its own timetable and its own rationale and its own methodology about unifying with Taiwan. Eventually, the unification is a megatrend in the world. No country, no groups of countries will ever have any capability of blocking China's reunification. But you may know for decades, China has been pursuing peaceful reunification. There are ups and downs involving the separatists in Taiwan, involving the U.S. Overselling of weapons to Taiwan, which I call as a ripoff of the people in Taiwan. So China will control its own timetable. China will control its own logic in terms of how to achieve reunification. And I think, personally, there is no comparison between what the United States is doing to Venezuela and to President Maduro and the First Lady on the one side,
right,
as compared to what China may eventually do to achieve reunification with Taiwan.
Victor, thank you so much for your time today. Victor Gao, Vice President at Center.